Hey guys, this is John, and I'm happy to announce that we have a new title available for sale on Chessable, and that is 100 Endgames You Must Know by Grandmaster Jesus de la Villa. So this book was first published back in 2008. New in Chess is the publisher, and we're very grateful that New in Chess has allowed us to sell this book via our platform. I'm personally excited for a couple reasons. One, this is one of my favorite Endgame books. You might have heard me recommend this in my videos before. I've recommended it to students. I've worked through endgames and, in fact, learned a lot of endgames myself using this book. So I think it's helpful for players of all abilities. And two, I think this book is perfect for the Chessable module, where we use spaced repetition and spaced review to help you understand and commit things to memory. So having 100 endgames with very concrete lines where you're trying to win them or draw them, depending upon what the goal is in the position, that's just absolutely perfect for what we offer here on Chessable. So I'm going to give you a brief rundown of the book, and then maybe even review a few positions that I've studied from the book myself, test my knowledge a bit. So on the title page here, you can see some of the praise for the book. You can look this up on Amazon or other places, but this is a very highly regarded endgame book. And it has 66,000 words of instruction. No surprise there because this is a print book. I actually have it right here. I bought this copy a few years ago. It's about 250 pages in print form. And everything that's in the book is in this Chessable repertoire too. We haven't cut any corners or taken anything out. So 66,000 words of instruction. You can see there's quite a few informational variations. And that's because at various times, De La Villa gives explanatory lines and he tweaks the endgame that he's showing you a bit and tells you whether that's a win or a draw. Okay, so he's not just giving you the 100 endgames and leaving it at that. There are extenuating circumstances in these endgames that he wants you to be aware of. So he's giving you that information as well, which we made informational lines. If we go into the chapter breakdown, you can see that it's broken down into 15 chapters. And this covers the entirety of endgames, like all sorts of endgames that you can get. You have your basic king and pawn endgames, knowing how to do opposition and the rules associated with that, all the way up to more complicated stuff. Personally, I found some of the most challenging sections to be the opposite color bishops, especially with this bishop and two pawns versus bishop, which can be a win or a draw. And also the rook plus two pawns versus rook, which I got to admit, I've been slacking on this section. I really need to learn this section again. It's been just staring me in the face. That's like a scenario where you might have king and a rook and f and h pawn against king and rook. I got to know those endings better. There's a basic test at the beginning you can use to test your knowledge, and there's also a final test to see if you've really absorbed the information here. And that's on top of what we do at Chessable naturally, which again is the spaced repetition. And just to illustrate how the information is laid out, so if we go into, let's say, this knight versus pawn section, just wanted to show you like an example. If we click on this. So here we have an endgame king and knight versus king and pawn. White is trying to stop this black pawn, prevent it from promoting or sacrifice the knight for it. And one thing we've done is we've added in arrows and circles where it would aid your knowledge. And De La Villa includes these in the book too. But in this case, white can draw if the knight gets in this circuit represented by these circles. G4, E3, F1 creates this like wheel scenario where your knight can move around and stop the pawn. So by playing knight G4, white does so. And you can see that all of the explanation found in the book is here as well. One thing we did too, if I go back to the chapter breakdown, let's go to the rook versus pawn section. So let's say we look at this line. So this is a position I recognize as a win for white, provided it's white to move. White's king is very far away from the black a pawn, which is trying to promote on a1. But with rook g5, white creates this cut across the fifth rank. The black king cannot pass there. You shall not pass. And you can see what happens if black just moves the a pawn up the board. White's king is going to try to close in. And as soon as that a pawn gets a couple files away, 2 files away from that black king, then white can play rook g3 and track it down. And unfortunately for black, they just lose. You can see a2, rook a3, the pawn's dead. King and rook versus king is an easy win. But I wanted to bring up this line because you can see the diagrams that we've included on the right. So not only are there explanatory variations, but where appropriate, we've put in things like diagrams too. to assist in your understanding of these lines. So I think the chapter breakdown is quite nice, and the entire book is like organized in a very comfortable way where you can make your way through and commit these variations to your head and hopefully reproduce them in your own games. I wanted to go and see if I can review some of my lines too. So let's click on review here. This will be some pressure having to review my lines on camera, especially in endgames, which for an international master should be fairly basic. Although, as I've said, some of these endgames are pretty tough, so let's just see how I do here. Okay, this is white to move. Black's pawn is trying to promote this way. I believe we want to get the rook behind the pawn and try to close in with the king. I'm just estimating what move to start with. I think I want to start with rook c8. But I should have played king g5. Very bad. King g5? Okay, and how does that work? So king g5, am I just closing with the king immediately? Yeah, I think so. Now I have to play rook here, which conveniently cuts off the king as well. Yeah, now I can get my king down to d2 and just in time stop the pawn. Yeah, and since I got that wrong, it's good that it's prompting me here. This is one of the most important chapters in the book. Rook and pawn, rook versus pawn. Yeah, and explanatory analysis is given, since clearly I didn't get that right. Okay, let's keep pressing on. Yeah, it showed me king g5 was my move. So, yeah. I think the way I did it, if I had gone rook c8, the problem is black can play king c3 and try to cross over and eventually muscle out, shoulder out the white king. So yeah, king g5, now that I look at it, is just clearly the better move. So, all right. Well, I failed the first one. Let's keep going here. This is another endgame with king and rook versus king and pawn. Okay, so our rook is in not such a great situation. I want to cross over with my king, get to the other side. So I think I should start with king e6. Yeah, keep going with king d5, king d4, and we're going to be just in time to stop the pawn. That's one key aspect of winning these positions. You want your king on the other side of the opponent's pawn. So, all right, no worries there. Let's continue reviewing. Okay, here, I think I should start with a check so that I can get that king cross. So like rook h5 check, let's say king d4, king c6, c4, king b5. Yeah, and I'm going to be able to stop the pawn that way. The king's lined up like this is currently not good for white. So let's do it this way. Yeah, and here I can play, I think, king b4 or rook c5. Just king b4 looks cleaner. And now let's go here. Stop the rook from behind, close in with the king. We win the pawn. Yeah, here, I must have got this wrong before. Yep, there we go. Okay. So Chessable is confident that I know that one. Let's try another one here. Ooh, tricky. Okay, so white's king is cut off on the other side of the pawn. King g4 is the obvious move. King g4, d3 check. Yeah, I think that's what I need to do. Yep. Okay, now king there. I think I need to deliver a check. Or do I? No. King g3. King g3 is the move, yes. Pawn advances, and now check. Very important. And now we can get our king to f2. If black slides over, yeah, we'll be able to stop the pawn. Okay. All right, so it looks like I've reviewed all of my necessary moves in this session. A couple things I wanted to mention. All the endgames in this book have been 6-man table-based proofed. So we went through and looked at them all just to make sure the accuracy was good. Obviously, New in Chess did that originally when they published this book. But having that extra assurance that all the endgames are computer checked is quite nice. Also, one thing we did, maybe I can go back out to a chapter that shows this. We added in alternative moves. So often when you're studying an endgame, there will be a situation where you can play a move that's equivalent to what is actually given by the author in the book. And let's say, like if I go to the basic endgame section, there's king and rook versus king and bishop. Somewhere here. Yeah, rook versus bishop. So let's say we click on this line. So whenever you have king and rook versus king and bishop, it's a pretty sound strategy to actually head for the opposite color corner of your bishop. Okay, so in this case, black has a light square bishop. Black is completely trying to draw. Of course, king and bishop cannot beat king and rook, barring some really crazy circumstance. Actually, can you even set up a checkmate with king and bishop versus king and rook? I don't think so, unless there's other pieces on board. But anyways, black is clearly trying to draw this. And the best way to draw this that involves the minimum amount of effort is actually to head for the corner that is opposite your bishop, because there's all these stalemate motifs. So if we play through this, like rook a8 check, bishop g8, you can see that if white just played some neutral move like rook b8, if they just passed, it would be stalemate. So even though black is passively placed, black escapes with the draw. And now here, bishop b3 is given. So in this situation, like if you were learning this line and bishop b3 was the move, but you instead played bishop c4, you would still be given credit for that. Chessable would prompt you and say, try again, because bishop b3 is the move the author recommends, so it follows that line, but bishop c4 shouldn't detract from what you've learned. So you could play bishop c4 and you wouldn't be penalized for it. You'd just be prompted to try again and hopefully play the correct move. So that's just one thing that we rolled out recently I wanted to mention. I have a rook endgame repertoire that I implemented that change because it's very important when you're studying endgames. Often there's equivalent moves and you shouldn't be docked for that. Otherwise, I think I've said everything I wanted to say about 100 endgames you must know. If you need work on your endgame, and pretty much everyone needs work on their endgame, honestly, as you can see from me getting the very first problem that I tried to review wrong, I think this book is useful for you, and I hope that you'll buy it via Chessable and review your endgames that way. The price should be $14.99 for the first week. We're going to offer a sale price, and I believe it will be going up to $19.99 thereafter. So if you want to get it at the slightly discounted rate, $14.99 for the first week of its availability. And as always, if you have any questions, just let me know right in the chat or in the YouTube comments below, and I'd be happy to answer. All right, thank you for watching. Hope you find this book useful, and I'll be back again soon. Bye, guys.